Hey friends, and welcome back. This week I'm sharing 5 easy and balanced meal ideas that are suitable both for lunch and dinner, can partly be prepared ahead of time, and are most importantly super delicious. All of the ingredients and notes can be found in the caption as always, and let's begin. We are starting by making a tomato tofu stir fry, which comes together in about 20 minutes. And given the name, this dish is actually a fusion of Italian/Mediterranean flavors and a classic tofu stir fry. So I'm starting by getting a block of pressed tofu and I'm cutting this into slabs like so. I'm doing about the same shape and size for a medium-sized aubergine. Both the tofu and aubergine are gonna go into a container with some cornstarch, salt, rosemary and thyme. And I'm shaking this up to make sure it's all coated evenly. Moving over to the stove, I made sure my pan was preheated properly. I then go in with the olive oil, add the tofu and aubergine and spread this out as evenly as possible. I fry this for around 10 minutes while stirring occasionally until both the tofu and aubergine are crispy on all sides. I'm also finely mincing 2 large cloves of garlic and halving a handful of cherry tomatoes. Lastly, I'm making the stir-fry sauce by combining a tablespoon of tomato paste, balsamic vinegar, salt, pepper and a good splash of water in the same container just to save some dishes, you know? I mix it well and add more water as needed. Back to the pan, the veggies and tofu are looking good, so I'm going in with the garlic and tomatoes, sauteing for another 2 to 3 minutes until the garlic is fragrant. Add the sauce and let it cook for just a minute. Add a bit more water if it becomes too dry, and then add some fresh basil if you want. I like to add this right at the end to make sure the flavor doesn't get lost in the sauce. And that is the stir fry done. On the side, I decided to go with some white rice to keep the idea of a fusion dish, but some couscous or even pasta would work as well here if you're wanting to go more in the Mediterranean direction. A final drizzle of good olive oil on top for extra flavor, and you've got yourself a nourishing and filling meal. This roasted cauliflower salad is a new favorite salad of mine, and for a good reason. It combines crispy cauliflower and chickpeas, a flavorful dressing with charred lemons, and the addition of some cooked farro just takes it over the top. And I am realizing that sounds super fancy, but the method of preparing this is honestly super simple. You need a large head of cauliflower and you're gonna cut 2 or however many slices you want. Place the slices on a baking sheet and then set to the side. We can then start by making the marinade. Combine nutritional yeast, thyme, ground coriander, salt and olive oil and mix together. You're then going to rub about half of the marinade on the cauliflower and get this into the oven to bake for around 25 minutes. To another baking tray, add some chickpeas and add the remaining marinade. Mix to combine and roast for 20-ish minutes. In the meantime, you're going to zest a lemon and cut the lemon in half. The next step is optional, but highly recommended. Add the lemon halves to a small pan with a drizzle of oil and char them until they're almost black, like this. This elevates the flavor so much. It's one of my new favorite cooking techniques. If you don't have time or you don't want to char the lemons, just leave them as they are. So then we move on to making the dressing. I used this white almond butter as the base, but tahini works just as well. We also need Dijon mustard, the lemon zest from earlier, finely minced chives, the juice from both of the charred lemon halves, and a pinch of salt. And I just dilute this dressing until it's a pourable consistency. At this point, the cauliflower and chickpeas should be nice and crunchy. So to assemble, the base of the salad are some arugula and cooked farro, although you can use couscous, quinoa or whatever you have on hand, honestly. Top with one of the cauliflower slices, making sure it doesn't fall apart. Those crispy chickpeas, as well as a nice few drizzles of the creamy lemon dressing. The recipe makes 2 servings, so I had my lunch for the next day ready and prepped, which is always appreciated. Moving on to the next recipe, a quick and easy soba noodle dish that is also perfect for taking on the go if that's something you need to do. I'm starting with the miso and sesame marinated tofu that I have made about 50 times on here at this point, and I'm getting this on a baking tray to bake for around 20 minutes. The rest of the meal comes together probably even quicker than the tofu needs in the oven. So I start by boiling some soba noodles according to the package instructions. And while those are cooking away, I use this julienne peeler to peel some carrot and cucumber, which are gonna add a nice freshness and crunch to the noodles. Lastly, all that's left to do is making a sauce by combining tahini, the juice from half an orange, which I add in stages to make sure the tahini doesn't split, soy sauce, a lot of grated ginger and black pepper, and I mix this until well emulsified. This sauce needs a lot of ginger to have that sweet and spicy effect with the orange juice. Once the noodles are cooked and drained, I add them in with the veggies and add about 3/4 of the dressing, and I mix it together until well combined. Okay, let's serve it up, starting with the soba veggie mix, the baked crispy tofu, and then I add some optional but highly recommended toppings. I went with pickled red onions, some fresh parsley, and a sprinkle of sesame seeds. You could also do some peanuts or coriander if that doesn't taste like soap to you. I then drizzled the remaining sauce on top for some extra goodness. As mentioned, this is a great meal to take on the go with you and enjoy for lunch at work or uni, but it's also just a quick one to keep in your repertoire for a busy day. Next up, we're making a chana masala and flatbread bowl using a few pantry staples and spices for the main dish. Just an FYI, I was making a big batch of the masala to keep in the freezer and highly recommend you do the same. So then to a large pot, I'm adding in some oil as well as onion, garlic and ginger, and I'm frying this until fragrant, which takes about 5 minutes, ensuring not to burn the garlic, of course. I then go in with the spice mix I had prepared. The exact measurements for this are in the caption. Unfortunately, my camera decided to take on a life of its own right then and there and stop recording, but you essentially just add tomato paste, passata, and a huge dollop of peanut butter to the pot. I then also add some water and mix this together well to make sure there's no lumps of peanut butter. And lastly, I'm adding the chickpeas and mix it together one last time. I put the lid on and let this simmer for around 10 minutes while rolling out the dough for some flatbread, which I wanted to serve on the side. Of course, you can also serve some fluffy rice with it, topping with some pickled red cabbage, which is optional but highly recommended once again. I had made this a few days prior by adding a bunch of thinly sliced red cabbage into some jars, adding a good amount of salt and filling about 1/3 of the jar with the cheapest vinegar I could find in the supermarket. Then fill the rest of the jar with hot water and shake it to mix it all together. And you've got a fresh and tangy topping for bowls, salads, anything really. And it also lasts in the fridge for so long. But back to the masala, I had the fresh, warm flatbread on the side for dipping, and this was such a nice meal to have on a cold and gloomy afternoon. The leftovers store perfectly in the fridge for a few days or in the freezer for a few months. The last recipe of this video is one I've made before on my channel, but I feel it deserves the spotlight one more time in a separate video. It's a marinated tofu souvlakia and rice bowl with a marinade that I could honestly drink like a smoothie. Well, that's a bit of a stretch, but it's very good. Ideally, you marinate the tofu the day before eating, or at least a couple of hours before, to ensure the best flavor. I just did this the day prior to filming. Add olive oil, Dijon mustard, lemon zest and juice, a clove of minced garlic, maple syrup, oregano, salt and pepper to a container with the tofu and coat it well. I set this in the fridge overnight and then the next day baked it for around 20 to 25 minutes. To go with it, I made a quick cucumber and herb salad with red onion, mint, parsley, lemon and sumac, and let this marinade while cooking up some rice as well to have as the main source of carbs for the meal. Once the tofu had finished baking, it was already time to assemble. This is obviously a super quick one. So I had the cooked rice topped with the cucumber salad, as well as that flavor-packed tofu, and drizzled the extra marinade on top as well for some extra flavor. This recipe is inspired by Connor Curran, which I will leave a link to his socials down in the caption for you, and I have to thank him for introducing me to this delicious tofu recipe. Anyhow, let me know in the comments if you like today's recipes, and if so, which one of them you'll be trying, and I'll see you very soon for another video.